Hello and welcome to our Busy Central Lunch event about our new 2024 release Wave 1. Today we'll present you what is new related with automated IRS 1099 reporting. This is an amazing topic, but keep in mind this is a local topic only for the United States market. Let's first introduce ourselves. Together with me today, I have Arthur Wenzel, software engineer who made the biggest part of this functionality. And on my side, my name is Alexander Totovic. I'm product manager responsible for this feature. So let's first explain shortly what we will talk today. I'll first make some short introduction, and it will be mostly related to what did we have earlier, why we decided to move to new app to make redesign. Then we will explain you new concept of this app. Not only concept, but all new values will get with this redesign, because this is not only technical redesign. We are bringing new values there. Shortly, briefly explain main features, an overview. Why? Briefly, because Arthur will show full demo end-to-end scenario with all these details, so you will see in a practice how it works. So let's start with the introduction. Let's remind us what Form 1099 is, if you didn't work earlier with that. I hope you are, but if not, Form 1099 is one of several IRS tax forms used, as I mentioned, only in the United States. 1099 form is recorded entity or person other than your employee gave or paid you a money. That means that payer must fill 1099 form and send copy to the receiver. In our case, it will be sent to vendor, and the other side to IRS. So payer can file in two ways. Payer can print and mail paper forms. That means printing on original pre-printed IRS forms and send this to IRS and send the same copy to the vendor. And other option is electronically through IRS or Information Return Intake System. That means fully automatically. Printing on pre-printed forms and mailing to IRS and vendors, this is something what we had earlier. Let's say we still have this inside the Busy Central, but this is old feature. And now with new app, you can use this full integration together with electronically sending through IRS and emailing to your customers. Now, when we talk about what we had, let's remind you. We had 1099 setup. In 1099 setup, we had some codes and rules only for the current year, so you couldn't have active both years, for example, now 2024 and previous 2024 or the next one. So you could have only one a year, and updated wait for Microsoft. So there is pros and cons. It was not so complicated to have all these details. You had to wait Microsoft, and this is good and bad. You had to wait because you had to wait Microsoft finish with everything and then to refresh. And what after refresh? After refresh, once updated, there is no way back. So you had to report earlier. You had to finish with the last year, and then you need to refresh with new data, and you can continue to work with new data. And yeah, this is, as I said, all the time good and bad. What we had more? We had a really easy vendor setup. It was a really easy, straightforward. You had to open vendor to set up this vendor at 1099 liable. You had to choose 1099 code, default code for this vendor. And yes, this vendor should be natural person, and you had option to have only the one 1099 code per vendor. You could change this on document, but in general, only one 1099 per vendor by default. Process was, let's say, easy, but sometimes it could be complicated. You had a post-purchase invoice, and when you had payment, you had to register payment, and that's it. But what could happen? You didn't configure properly vendor, so you didn't have proper IRS code there. So in this case, you could eventually go to vendor ledger entries, if you know for this situation. So you couldn't just update on vendor. No, you had to update on vendor side, but you need to go to vendor ledger entries to find all these entries and manually to change vendor entries. Yes, it was possible, but definitely not the best process you could imagine, but yeah, we had it. And when we finished with everything, so you could register all these details, you had to print forms, print reports, standard reports on the forms. So again, just to remind you, you had to use standard IRS forms, and this is where all headaches are starting. Yes, you had to print. It was, let's say, straightforward process, not such a big problem, but again, just to remind you, original forms, not PDFs we could download from IRS site, only original forms. So this is maybe easy on the first sight, but when Microsoft had to adjust these forms for printing every year, we could expect one field here and there changing some things, and Microsoft couldn't start updating the report layout before we get original. First thing, we had to get all changes. Then we had to get original form to order from IRS original form, so we could test printing original forms. Then it depends from printer to printer, and all the time we had issues, something like that. We just miss, all these boxes with address, with X, with numbers, and sometimes this is a problem about report layout design. Sometimes this is a problem how you configure your printer, and all the time it had a problem. This is just one of examples. All you can see 2021 year. This is just all example, but this is how things were going, and it was the most annoying. Especially it was in a tough period. You had to report not too late, not to pay fees. So this is something what we wanted to change, and what we did with the new concept. We wanted to redesign. And not only to redesign because we wanted. When we looked on BC ideas, I think that 5-6 different ideas about different types of redesign was already required from our partners, maybe customers as well. I don't know all names. So it was required from your side. And now we decided to redesign, but every time when we want to redesign, this is not just making all these features in a different way as an app. We wanted to bring some new value to you. And now let's see first completely process flow, how it will work in the future. First, we are starting with setting up. What you need to do, you need to set up your vendors. It will be a little bit different. We want to give you a little bit more space, what you can configure there. You will see later in our demo. Then again, you need to post documents and you need to register payments. So this is the same thing. This is something we are enforced by the law. But after setting up, we need to calculate. So we are starting to work. We have already documents, end of year. So end of year, we need to calculate everything. We need to run 1099 calculation, but now how we calculate? We are taking information from setup. Now we still have setup, 1099, actually this is IRS setup, but what we have there? Now we have IRS setup with different periods, so you can have different setups for 1 year, another year, next year, so you do not need to update, and if you forget to calculate something from previous year, you are in trouble. No, you can have all this reporting information in a parallel. You just need to choose what is active year for you. Then we have their 1099 forms, form boxes, and everything. So when you run calculation, we assume you have all documents and payment register. Now we have all this setup information about 1099 reports, and system will just calculate it. And when we calculate, what you will get now? First value, you will get, not first, this is now second value because after setup, you will get 1099 form documents. Now we have documents with header and lines. You will see a little bit more why this is important and why this is benefit. First, when we go to the next stage to review, you can much easier review. Earlier, you could calculate and you could report what you calculated. It was really complicated to check if everything was okay, if you missed some documents, or for some reason you need to adjust some information. Now we have this form, we have actually these documents, so you can check all these details. And if everything is okay, we can handle with different statuses. And more important, after reporting, we will have 1099 forms in a history. So you can check history from previous year, previous years, and of course, you can configure your retention policy if you have thousands of forms and you are taking care about your database space. Yeah, you can configure your retention policy and you can remove all, I don't know, for example, more than 3 years old forms whatever you decide. Now we have next stage to schedule. And in schedule, you can schedule a file and delivering. What is important? How it works. Now, we are reporting directly through e-file, through IRS platform. So we are reporting there. It will be configured. You just need to have your credentials there, and system will send automatically electronically. Why this is important, I didn't mention previously, you could print. Now you cannot use pre-printed forms, but this is important because even now you could print only if you have up to 10 reports per year. So this is a really small number. If you had more, you had to report through platform. So earlier you had to prepare file and to report manually. Now we automate it fully. It will be automatically when you decide to report, it will be reported to IRS. Then we have second part. We need to print forms and to send to our vendors. So how it will work? We will print not on pre-printed forms. We will use plain paper. We will create 1099 PDF copy substitutions. What it means, you will have all details you have on a regular 1099, but it will be copy substitution because law enable us to use this copy substitution. We just need to have all details we have in our standard pre-printed forms, and we can use these copy substitutions if we are report directly to IRS through their APIs. And now what is even more important for these copy substitutions, you are in control of that. You can see on the left side 1099 layout setup. Actually, this is not the right name for this setup. I just wanted to make it as simpler here on this chart. You will get by Microsoft already configure reports, but if there is some changes and you cannot wait to Microsoft finish and update in next minor all these details, you can easily add just new box, put the description what is in this box, say, okay, in this box I will collect this value from this place. So this is now much easier for you. And it will be much easier for Microsoft. Microsoft can provide much faster support and not having all these issues in communications, preparing layout. This is every time it comes to layout, 1 millimeter left and right, up and down. This is really complicated. Now it will be much straightforward, so this is not complex topic. And now, okay, we have PDFs. What we will do with these PDFs? We are enabling on vendors, if vendor accept consent to receive these documents electronically, we can fully automate. Once when you report, you can put in a background process and send all emails. If you have thousands of vendors, you will send automatically thousands of emails to them, and that's it. You reported. But if some of your vendors do not want to give you consent, you still have printing for manually delivering, so you can start a process to print all these forms on a plain paper, and then you can use standard mailing process for execution. I want to emphasize one thing here, because this is something what we will do in this major, but some things will come in next few minors. And what it means, this black box connection with IRS through IRS portal will come in next few minors. Now I cannot promise exactly date because we are waiting some confirmation from IRS. As soon as we get, we will finish this part. But what I can say, it will be before your reporting period, because now we have more than enough time to have everything ready for end of year. But idea is not to deliver this in the end of year. We want to deliver this as soon as possible so you can test all these things, how it works in the practice. Okay, let's look briefly main features, make an overview. Before I show you few print screens, I want to show you how you can enable this functionality. When you start with feature management, this is only one-way process. So once when you start, you have first to choose data transfer, and data transfer will offer you two options. First is if you are already user, you are using Busy Central, you can choose transfer existing 1099 data from your base app. And if you choose, you need to choose which year is your active year, and the system will just use everything what you had earlier and transfer to IRS reporting periods and codes, so you will have brand new data in new app copied from existing. This is not one-to-one because this is, as I said, different design, but it works. Second option is you do not want to use your existing data. You want to create a new setup, so you can choose default data, and we are providing default data for the next year, so you can create just default setup. And again, you will get all these reporting pages and codes, everything what is needed. Why this one is important? Maybe you will use standard data upgrade transfer from your existing data in most situations, but when you have new customers, when you enable new customers, you cannot transfer from existing data. So in this case, for any of new companies, new customers, you will use this create with new setup. So they will get all fresh, new, and correct data for working. What we have in 1099 forms and 4 boxes. First, you will see we have these IRS reporting periods. As I mentioned, we have starting and ending date, so we can have more different periods in the same time. You need to mention what is active period, but you can have different periods for reporting. Then you can use different types of supported forms for each of the on 1099 forms. Then you have 1099 form boxes where you can specify different situations, minimum reportable amounts, everything what is related with amounts. Next, you need to configure vendors. This time it will be not directly a vendor card. You have IRS setup for vendors. So when you run IRS setup, you can change your default codes. You can use different 1099 codes, and in different periods, vendor can be eligible for different 1099 codes. Okay, only one can be default, but you will have much more space, much more options using this setup. And then 1099 document, you can see example of this document now. As I said, we have header, we have lines. This exists as a document. What is important to remember? One form is one document, and you have more form boxes. When it means one more, for example, you have miscellaneous, and yes, for this form, it can be only one. You cannot have, for example, NEC and miscellaneous in the same document because there are different form types for printing. But one document is for one form, but you can have more different form boxes, as form boxes can have different amounts, reportable amounts, and so on. So this is important to find. You can find all details included in these calculated amounts. Arthur will explain how you can configure to have it or to not have, but this is on you, how you will make a setup. And yes, you can handle with different status. When you create, you will see status is open, then you can continue with different statuses. Some of statuses will come automatically, some of them will be manually made. And when you finish with this, you need to print and send. Just to remind you once again, you will not print original pre-printed form by IRS, so you will not order from IRS original forms anymore. Now, you will deliver to IRS through integration with IRS APIs, as I said, in next few minors. And for vendors, you can print copy B and 2. C is for you, but again on a plain paper as a substitutions. With all details we have original, even all these instructions you have there, you will see Arthur will show you how to configure instruction. So everything is there, everything what we have on original form. This is just, design is a bit different, but everything what exists in original form, it will be printed there. So after that you can send via email or physical mail. You can configure IRS responsible person for emailing. This is important. We can use standard vendor email, but if you have, for example, a commercial email for this vendor and you want to send on different email, now you can enable different emails, so you can have IRS responsible person for email, so you can send directly to this person. It will be much easier to have additional option for sending. And we have TIN number, and this is really important because you should secure this TIN number, especially when we are sending via mail, even mail, physical mail, but especially email. Now, what we can do, we can make a setup. Yeah, by default, you can print original TIN, your company TIN and your vendor TIN. That's okay. But you can use a setup to hide. This is allowed by the law, only 4 last digits to be showed. You can choose to make this setup only for your vendors or for your company and vendors altogether. So you can secure this TIN number and you can easily use emailing for this vendor without any security issue. Yes, you have this 1099 form statements set up, so all these form boxes you can set up by you, and you have IRS form instruction set up, so you can easily make instructions. And for emailing, you will see you will get some default email how you can send, but you can change by yourself. I will keep this for Artur to show now when he starts. So now I think I finished with all my slides, and I will give display and stage my colleague Artur to show you full end-to-end demo. Artur.
As Alexander mentioned, the feature is available in the feature management. So unless you enable the feature, you're still going to use the old 1099 base application. And after you enable the feature in the feature management in one company, it is basically enabled for all the companies. So the other way of setting up the feature will be opening the assisted setup. And from the assisted setup, you can find the setup and IRS forms feature. And when you click this one, you can see the guide page. On the first step, we explain what it's all about, what you want to get. On the next one, there are exactly a few options Alexander mentioned. So first of all, create new setup. This is for the fresh installation if you're a new customer. And the second one will be transfer existing data. If you already have some data in the old 1099 base application feature and you want to transfer this data to the new IRS Forms app. And of course, we want to do this peer reporting here. Let me specify reporting here. I want to use create new setup option and go next. The next step will be a few options for the IRS Forms apps. The first one is called collect details for line. This is important if you want to see some kind of the details of the form document line. I will show you when the form document is ready, what this option means. And the next option, it's called protect TIN. And this is exactly to make tax identification number on the printing forms more secure. By default, the option is none, but you can always select protect TIN for vendors or for vendors and the company. And let's choose exactly this option. And that will be the last step. So the IRS forms is completed at that point. Now let's open the page that is called IRS Reporting Periods. And here we can see the IRS reporting period, and from here we can open all the necessary setups, forms, vendor setups, adjustments, and the documents. And let's start one by one. When I click forms, I can see all the usual forms like you had previously in 1099 base application, but right now it is important that all these forms are connected to the IRS reporting period. And then from the form, I can open the form boxes, and you can see the usual list of all the form boxes with the minimum reportable amount. As you can see, all the data is generated automatically from the guide page. Let me go back. Also, you can notice two actions here. The first one is called edit statement. And this is the exactly the flexible setup Alexander mentioned for printing form. So here you can specify the setup of how you want your printing forms to work. You can specify the print value type, filter expression, row totaling. So this is really flexible, and in case you want to print your form differently. The next one is called edit instructions. And this is also the part for the printing form. Here you can set up all the printing instructions for header, for every single box. And I will show you where exactly we have these instructions on the printing form. Let me go back. The next will be, let me skip the vendor setup. I will go to the adjustments. This is also the usual feature, but here you can do this for the reporting year. Let me choose the vendor, and let me choose the form, miscellaneous, and miscellaneous 01, and the amount 100. So I'm setting up the adjustment for this vendor, for this code, and what is important for this reporting year. Let me go back. And then let me show you how you can create the new reporting periods. So let's say you want to set up the new reporting period. And I guess you're curious how you want to get all the forms and vendors and adjustments. Of course, you don't need to create all those manually. For this, you have this special action that is called copy setup from. So once you created the period, you click copy setup from. And here you need to specify the from period. When we open the list, we can see all the periods except, of course, this one. We can select 2026 and then click OK. And then we can see some details. So what exactly being copied? We can see that 4 forms, 47 form boxes, vendor box adjustments, and form statement lines being copied. And of course, we can check this. We can click forms, and we can see absolutely the same forms copied from the other period. Now let me continue with the 2026 and open the important part of the setup that is called vendor setup. And once again, this is setup per reporting period. I'm going to choose the vendor right here, and I'm going to choose the code and the form box. What is important that we added here, and you didn't have this in the previous version of the feature, you don't need to add all the vendors here manually. As you can imagine, you can have thousands of vendors, and you need to type all of them manually one by one. You don't need to do this, and let me show you how you can make your life a little bit easier. There is an action that is called suggest, and when you click this, you can specify the filters for the vendors to add those vendors to the vendor form box setup. And I have already made a setup for a few vendors. Let me choose the partner type person. And then I only want to consider domestic vendors. Domestic. And when I click OK, I can see that a few vendors added to my form. So you don't need to add them manually. And of course, yeah, let me continue the specification of the form number on the form box number. The other important part of this vendor form box setup is in the action that is called propagate. So imagine that you already posted some invoices and payments for a certain vendor, but you didn't have a setup. For example, you just forgot to assign a specific IRS code to this vendor, but you already have the entries. So now what you want to do, you want to take this form and form boxes, and you want to propagate these changes to existing vendor ledger entries. You don't want to open vendor ledger entries, and you don't want to go one by one to each invoice and specify, okay, this invoice miscellaneous 1, this invoice miscellaneous 1 as well. You want to do this automatically. And for this, you have the action that is called propagate. So you choose your vendor setup. The dates will be taken from the reporting period. And here you can select what exactly you want to consider. Do you want to consider purchase documents, or you want to consider vendor ledger entries, which are already posted entries, or you want to consider both? So once you do this, and once you click OK, those documents and those entries will be filled in with the form miscellaneous 01. That is it with the vendor form box setup. Let me show you how does it work in the vendor card. So when I go to the vendor card, and that is the important to show you the fields that have been added in scope of this IRS Forms app. First of all, you can see the miscellaneous code here in the vendor card. Of course, you don't need to set up in the vendor card. This is only the non-editable fields, and you can click here and you will be look up to the vendor form box setup from here. So this is just for the visibility, the usual way of showing you what is the code is assigned to the vendor. Then right below, you can see two fields that is important for the emailing story. The first one is called receiving 1099 e-form consent. So this one should be enabled if you want to send emails with IRS forms to your vendor. So if it's not enabled, you won't be able to do this. And the next one is called email for IRS. So these emails will be used to send PDF forms to your vendor. Now, let me create the purchase invoice for this vendor. and show you that the data is taken from the vendor form box setup. The purchase invoice is created. I'm going to assign vendor invoice now. And below in the header, you can notice that, okay, we have the form number and form box number on those values taken from the setup. And of course, you can change them. I can select any miscellaneous forms I want. For example, I can select 02 right here. I can change the default setup. You can also notice that I have specified the payment method code is called cash. So in this case, it will be a little bit easier for me. I don't need to create payment manually. So once I create and post purchase invoice, I can get straight to the form documents creation. Let me finish with the purchase invoice. I want to specify direct unit cost more than minimum reportable amount, and I want to process this purchase invoice. Let me go back to the IRS reporting periods, and from here I can open the documents, and I want to create the form documents for this vendor and for this document. When I click create forms, here we can have the period pre-populated from the reporting period, and you can create the form documents for all vendors and for all forms if those two filters are blank, or you can choose specific vendor, or you can choose specific form. So form documents will be created only for those. And the important option is replace. So once the form document is created, you can notice that, okay, these numbers are not correct. So I want to probably change something in the vendor ledger entries. Probably I need to change some, I want to post additional document. And then I can use the option replace to recreate the existing form document. Let me click OK here. And we can notice that we have the form document. And I'm going to open this form document. So this is exactly what Alexander mentioned. So this is very different from the previous experience. In the previous experience, you posted vendor ledger entries, and then you just print the report. So you were not aware about the values and the values where they've been taken from. Right now, you have this information. So you can notice that you can look up to the calculated amount in the line. When I do this, I can see the 1099 form document line details. And this is the list of the vendor ledger entries connected to the certain lines. So this is exactly the detailization that was missing in the previous version of the feature. Of course, you have the amount here, minimum reportable amount. You can have adjustment amount, and the important field, it is called include in 1099. As you know, 1099 works in the way that if the amount is more than minimum reportable amount, then we need to include this in the report. But if it's below the minimum report amount, then we're not going to include this. And in the previous version of the feature, you were not quite sure, okay, do I have the amount more than minimum or less than minimum amount? Right now, you can see all the lines here, but based on the this field, including 1099, you can understand, okay, so I'm going to include this code in 1099 report, or I don't want to include this in 1099 report. So you'll have this information right now as well. Now, the next step will be the submission of the 1099 report. We want to send this electronically. This part is not implemented yet, and that will be available in the one of the next releases. But we want you to test the other features, which is printing and mailing. And the important part is that the form document needs to be in the submitted state. And for that, we have implemented the temporary solution with the action that is called mark as submitted. So you mark your form document as submitted, and you can notice that the status right now is submitted. And only when the status is submitted, you can print your document and you can email. Once again, so this part will be changed. Instead of mark as submitted action, in the future releases, you will have the action that is called just submit, and the data will be sent electronically to IRS. And after that, what you can do, you can print your form documents. You can click print, and here you can choose the report type. Copy B, copy C, and copy 2. Those are options Alexander explained. Let me preview this form and talk a little bit more about this one. In the top of this printing form, we can have the type. It's called copy B. So if you select copy C or copy 2, you will have the different label on the top. And then below, you have the usual section for the vendor information and for the company information on the left side. You have all the details, name, address, basically everything. And the important part is the tax identification number. You can notice right here that those values are protected. So you only see the last 4 digits. Below, you can see the miscellaneous code. We have only miscellaneous 02 and the amount. And on the very last page, you can see the instructions for recipients. So those are taken exactly from the flexible setup that is called edit instructions text. So you can see them right here. If something is wrong, you can change them and the changes will be reflected on this page. Let me go back and show you the last part of my presentation, emailing. You can notice in the header of the form document that we have the consent from the vendor for receiving 1099 forms electronically. We have the vendor email here, and that means that we can successfully email our PDFs, PDF forms to this vendor. When I click send email, I can also choose 2 options, copy B or copy 2. So these are only options which make sense for the vendor. Let me choose copy B. I want to click OK, and I want to send. You can notice that now we have the options copy B, send, change to true. So by this option, you can notice that, okay, I have already emailed this vendor with this PDF form. And I have already set up emailing feature here. I want to show you how that would work on the vendor form box. I have the new email right here. And here I have the email subject, that 1099 form copy for your records. We have some email body saying, okay, we want to send you some 1099 forms. And here I have the attachment, it is PDF, and I want to download this and show you that this is exactly the printing form I have presented previously. The important part is that the emailing subject and emailing body, this is not the hard-coded text. This is something that you can set up in the IRS Forms app. And I will show you where exactly you can set this up. The page is called IRS Form Setup. You can open it, and here you can find the email subject. You can change this, and the email body. And this is rich control text, so you can format this text in the way you want this. So this is very flexible. You can change this text as well. And that concludes my presentation. Back to you, Alexander.
Wow. Thank you, Artur, for a great presentation. And let's shortly wrap up. New and modern user experience, new features, configurable reporting, much more option, better security, more transparency for users, and great automation. So this is definitely great functionality. You will see, you need to change how you're working with 1099 reporting, but this is much, much better, much more options, so you can easily do many things you couldn't earlier. So Artur, once more, thank you for a great presentation. And I just wanted to mention one small thing before I forget. Maybe you noticed during Artur's presentation, on a few setup pages, we didn't have IRS 1099 form setup, we had IRS form setup. And in a few places, it was just IRS without 1099. Now, I just want to explain. We were thinking maybe in the future we will introduce more IRS things. Now this is not promising, do not understand me wrongly. We just wanted to predict maybe it will be in the future, so we do not want in the future, if we do this, to create second IRS and third IRS setup for different purposes. So you will find 1099 only on the forms what is exclusively for 1099 reporting, but for all others we kept only IRS setup or IRS form setup, something like that. So we can reuse this form eventually if we upgrade this functionality with some other reporting or whatever is related with IRS. So this is not something what we are planning to do right now, but just to make good foundation so in the future we can easily extend it if needed. Before I close this session, I just want to remind you on a great Business Central resources. First, join us on our Yammer channel, aka MSBC Yammer. You can talk with us, you can exchange messages with us, you can give us feedback, you can very often get some early test environment there. So we are open, there's full transparency, we can talk about all issues or all good things you have, so please join us. Then we are more than open to discuss publicly, so no problem, Twitter or X or some other channels, you can see details here. But more official from Microsoft side, join us on our monthly BC office hours. There are many, many different and interesting topics, and again, you will have opportunity to talk, to ask, to discuss with us about some features. And if you have something is missing in Business Central, in 1099 feature, on some other features, never mind what about, just submit your idea, aka MSBC idea. So we are really listening all this idea. And to be honest, this new functionality came here because of your ideas. That means we couldn't deliver immediately, but maybe it was better because we collected much more different ideas. And now I think we deliver a really great, amazing functionality. And if you forget all these different URLs, please do not forget this one, aka MSBC all, because this is a place where you can find not only this information, these links, but much more, dozens and dozens of different links. Before I say thank you, I want to call you and to encourage you to join us Q&A session. It will take approximately 7 days after BC launch event, 6-7 days, I'm not 100% sure, but you will be invited, definitely. And what is important, you will have this time, you will have enough time to watch all these videos, so you will collect what is important, what we maybe missed in our presentation, some other ideas, so you will have collection all this information. So when you have Q&A, you can ask face-to-face, through messages, whatever you prefer. So please join us there, and we will be more than open and transparent to discuss, both Arthur and I in this case. So thank you very much for watching this session.